guys, welcome to Good Vibes Sunday. I hope you all had a beautiful Sunday today. So today we're doing things a tad different. Typically we go ahead and we post on Sunday mornings, but today we had our second shot at doing a good night session. So let's get to it, guys. All right, so to start off, most often than not, I get asked the question about what are the things I should and shouldn't do when it comes to designing my home. So I wanted to start off with paint color. When it comes to choosing a great paint color, always keep in mind that paint color, and I actually discussed this and my 12 steps of creating a serene home for yourself in our last post. And so when it really comes to paint color, keep in mind that it has an effect on your mood. It has an effect on many things that affect you on a day-to-day basis. So especially when it comes to a design, you really want to stay in line with something that is, a color that is really going to complement the style that you're trying to go for and really the mood you're trying to create. So I always say, in smaller rooms, try to emulate sunlight. If you have a room that already has tons of windows and, doesn't need a whole ton of amplifying that artificial sunlight, then you want to go ahead and have more liberty with that and going in, whatever direction you like. But when it comes to smaller rooms that don't have a whole lot of windows and don't get a lot of sunlight, then you definitely want to go with a warmer tone, something that emulates that sunlight to create a warmer space and just, not, because if you go with the cooler color in there, then you're going to get that cold feeling in there. And, sunlight really plays a big part when it comes to creating spaces that feel warm and inviting and full of energy. So definitely something to keep in mind. So another really important thing that I wanted to cover was undertones. So paints, unless we're talking about primary colors, all paints have an undertone to them. So the best way that I can describe this is if you go to your local hardware store and you look at the displays holding all the swatches for paint colors, if you see that, for example, the blue or the green will start with a green, a pretty deep green, and it kind of goes, if you're adding a little more black to it, it goes darker. And then if you're going lighter, it goes lighter. It goes to a white or whatever it is. So you may look at that white swatch and be like, oh, well, this is white. No, but there's undertones of green, or there's undertones of blue, or there's undertones of yellow. And so when painting, when picking a paint color, you really want to be conscious of those undertones, because that is what's going to set the mood. It's really what you're going to be achieving. So, for example, I gave that example about a bedroom and trying to keep it with warmer undertones. So it doesn't mean go and pick out a yellow paint color. It means that, when you go to choose your paint color, and let's say you're going with a white or something along those lines, then you want to go ahead and see what that undertone color is. I always say the best tip I can give you is bring home a sample, not so much a swatch, but bring home a tiny sample of that paint color and perhaps a few of those, a few different options, and put them on your wall and then see how that paint color transcends throughout the day, because light, so sunlight, plays differently with different undertones. So just be aware of that. I always say is do a foot by foot square. If you try to just test a swatch or a wall with this sample of paint, if you're doing just a small little section, you're really not going to get that feel for it. So I always say do a 12 by 12 inch square of a paint sample, if not a little bigger, just to get that real feel of what it's going to look like, especially when you're comparing it with the sunlight and all the other elements of your room. All right, so sticking to the topic of paint color, I've been asked a lot about black paint. So here's where it gets tricky. The only place I've ever done black paint, and that I feel like it's the place to do it, would be a powder room. Now, I know that I said when you have small spaces to emulate sunlight, and especially if you don't have windows. So this is where it kind of, goes against the grain. But I feel like with a powder room, it's just fun. I feel like powder rooms are the one place that you can really get kind of funky with it. So unlike a bedroom where you kind of want to have more of a serene space and inviting, and plus you don't want to be painting your bedroom over and over again. Typically bedrooms aren't tiny. So if you get tired of that black, you want to really get rid of it, and repainting it is it's more of a hassle. So I feel like a powder room, it's easier, it's small, and it's just a place to really get away with it. So it really creates a funky, moody space, and I love it against brasses or golds. I think it's the best. So now this is just in terms of walls. If we're talking about furniture, like for example, cabinetry, etc., I mean, those all rules are out there. You can really, I love black paint on, especially when we're talking about modern here. So speaking of which, moving on to accent walls. I've been asked if the accent wall is coming back into style, and it is, but when I say it, in paint and an accent wall, I don't know. Personally, this is probably just a personal thing, but I don't really like it too much. I say if you're going to do an accent wall, do texture. Do maybe some wallpaper, if you want to bring some color in through that. I always say that there's certain wallpaper that kind of has that texture that you could feel it, and it looks like paint because it's one color, but if you touch it, it has cool texture, and it just brings a different element to the space versus just painting a wall a deep color or something contrasting. Now, if you really want to get fancy, you can do some shiplap, you could do some stone. I mean, there's so many different ways that you can go about adding an accent wall, and I always say have fun with that. That one is like up to your imagination, without going too gaudy or trying to go, I've seen, and this isn't talking crap or anything, but I've seen a lot of people do like the shiplap, and they'll do like a blue or a turquoise, like kind of like a smear on it or a wear on it. And, I always say just keep your colors cohesive. Try to keep everything pretty neutral unless you're going with like a deep dark color or something like that, but when it comes to blues and greens and purples and reds, really try to stay away from those because they can come off a little tacky for sure. All right, guys, so moving on to curtains. So this is what I say, do's with curtains. Try to always go higher when you're hanging your curtain rods. This is a big pet peeve of mine when I see people go, lower or below or just right above the window or slider, whatever it is they're trying to put a curtain over. Always try to go as high as you possibly can. Even if you have to go onto the ceiling, they have ceiling rods that come down from the ceiling, and it actually gives you the illusion of your eyes just being drawn right up, and it makes your ceilings always look a lot taller than they are. Guys, do not get curtains that are short. So what I mean by this is like wearing pants that are high waters. I mean, really big pet peeve of mine. Just make sure they're either, sometimes I've seen that people will do them where they're a little longer and they kind of drag on the floor, and that's okay. It's just a look. But really when it goes above and it looks like high water, just avoid it. Don't do it. And if I'm telling you to go as high as you can, then get some longer curtains. Don't do it, guys. Speaking of size, do not get rugs that are too small. So I've gotten this question so many times by clients or just by people in general, family members, etc. They'll say, with the rug, what is the right size? Like, how should I go about this? How do I scale this? And I always say that don't ever have your furniture floating around your rug. Always try to get at least the front 2 feet right, from your couch or your sofa, whatever it is, your chair, your armchair. Try to get those front feet right on top of that rug. You never want to go too small. I love my sister, and if you're listening, I am sorry, but she has this rug that's a lot smaller, and it just doesn't. It looks like a little pool or something. So what you really want to do is expand that rug big enough to get those front feet of your furniture on there. I just realized I kept calling furniture feet. It's legs, but you guys get the picture. Okay, my next don't do is don't be afraid to mix textures or patterns. So when I say this, I mean as far as like your pillows or your comforter with pillows, accent pillows, your rug, etc. So people get really afraid, or the opposite is true. People get a little carried away. So really keep a balance. I always say 2 to 3 max. So if you have one, let's say one accent pillow and it's one texture, and then you have a patterned, another patterned pillow in front of it, and let's say another patterned pillow. I always try to keep one always neutral, so one solid color. And then if you want to play with two others and have them be different textures or different patterns, then that's definitely okay. Here's a big one that I actually learned in school, and I feel like this is something that a lot of people don't realize, or kind of this is where people hit that mark where they're like, gosh, I don't know what to do with all this stuff, or I don't know how to go about it. And it really comes down to scale. Have you ever gone to the store or whatever, the home decor store, and you've gotten a bunch of pieces that you just absolutely love, and then you come home and you put them all together and you're like, gosh, it doesn't look good, or it doesn't look like I pictured it to look. And that's because you have to consider scale. So what scale means is how you scale your furniture versus, let's say, your elements, or, I'm going to actually... This is a really good one because, this is one that I've really emphasized a lot and I'm going to make a DIY, I'm going to make a video on this one, and I'm going to show you guys how to go about this. But, so let's say, for example, that your scale is big in anything. I'm talking about furniture, I'm talking about elements, I'm talking about when you go to do a bookcase, for example, and you have a vase that's, let's say, a foot high, and then you have diagonal to it another vase, or let's say even it doesn't have to necessarily be the exact same thing. It could be, let's say, not a vase, but a candle holder. But try to make always the height of everything pretty equal as far as scale, if that's what you're trying to achieve. Now, if you're going completely asymmetrical, then we got another thing. I'm always very symmetrical when it comes to my designs, and so it doesn't necessarily mean one vase, two vase. It just means that if one vase is a certain height, then I try to keep the other one the same on the opposite end. So what's another way to do this is also in numbers. So if I'm going to have, let's say, 3 of something, I try to have 3 of something else at the opposite end of it, right? So this can be in diagonal, it can be straight across. But always try to consider scale, guys. You never want to overcrowd anything. So that's where scale really plays a big part. Because when you start to just put a bunch of stuff together, it could feel like it's just all crowded. And what really makes a space feel designed is that you're having this in mind when you're designing. You're really making everything up to scale. You have your chairs. Guys, I'm just going to stop there because I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to make you guys a video just so I can really show you, because it's really hard to explain, but I can really show you this in a video. So stay tuned for that, guys. So moving on, I always say is don't forget functionality. Okay, this one is something that is easy to do because we get carried away with how beautiful things look, or the opposite is true. Yet again, sometimes we only think about functionality and we don't think about what it looks like. We don't think about the aesthetic of things. And there's something very beautiful about marrying the functionality of something with its great aesthetic, and really that's where design really plays a great part. So always remember to have some functionality. So for example, I always say, like, organizing, like let's say your pantry, buy some nice organizers, make that pantry or linen cabinet really look great, but also have slots or baskets or something to really put everything in, and so everything has a place. All right, guys, so moving on to wall art, and this one is something that I'm pretty passionate about because I always see that people kind of get carried away with the wall art. They'll do those galleries and stuff, and it's okay to add 3D dimensional objects onto your wall. I think that's fine, but you really have to, you can really flirt with having it be tacky. So always remember to just jump on Pinterest. I always say Pinterest has such great inspiration, and it'll give you a guideline of where to go when it comes to stacking or combining all these elements that you're putting on your wall. And when it comes to art, I always say art is one of those things that should definitely reflect your personality, but it should also be in line with your design. So as far as like your style, so whatever it is that you're trying to achieve when it comes to design style, just try to have that art kind of, everything needs to play with each other. So when it comes to color, when it comes to textures, when it comes to the choice of your furniture, and definitely the choice of your art, should all be playing in harmony, and it should all just flow together like one big masterpiece. Now, what do I mean by masterpiece? I mean that, your home should feel like something that is of your own. So I always say, like, when you're going to do something that is 3D on your wall, have it be something that actually means something, not just something that you picked up because you thought it was pretty. It's like, if you went on a travel, like you pick up a basket and maybe pick up like 4 of those baskets, or maybe pick up 4 baskets from different locations. It doesn't have to necessarily be from outside of the US. It could just be from, I don't know, you went to Santa Barbara, or you went out to the city with your husband and picked up some, at a flea market, you guys went and picked up some fruits and stuff. I always say is items that actually, when you look at them, that they promote that harmony and that happiness, and that they bring a smile to your face because you can associate a nice memory with them. And plus, they just look cool, it doesn't look so polished and perfect as nothing ever really is, guys. So 3D objects, put a basket on the wall. It's okay. You can combine a few baskets. You can combine it with some art, or just be creative with it. I feel like it's your home. Really have it feel like it. Okay, so switching gears here, the next don't do is combining certain finishes of, let's say, hardware with the wrong one. So this one I'm going to give credit to Nate Berkus. So he talked about, and he actually answered this question on one of his Insta stories, where someone asked, how do I combine, let's say, gold with something a little bit of a different, I don't know, like a brass, or, with a gold, or something more silvery. And the way that he addressed this was try to stay within the same sheen family. So what does this mean? This means that if you're going to go ahead and have something look aged, don't combine it with something too modern. Just try to stay within the same sheen. Don't go too shiny with aged, or brushed and shiny. Just try to stay within the same family when it comes to finishes. Another thing I wanted to talk about was sets. So I know a lot of people will go ahead and they'll buy, because it's comfortable, it's easy. You buy a dining room table and you buy the same coffee table that matches it, and the same side table with the same chairs, and everything matches, and it's easy. And a lot of people think that, that's okay because it all matches. But really what you want to do is have your home feel like it's lived in, like it's been purposely designed and put in different, put these sets in different places. So for example, those dining room chairs that you got with that dining room table, maybe take those chairs and put them somewhere else, somewhere else in your home. Maybe put those chairs in your rooms, and, and split up the sets. It's a big deal. I always say is don't try to ever make everything look so polished and so perfect. Make your your home feel purposeful. Make it feel like it's been lived in, and it has that actual texture to it, Another thing that Nate Berkus touched on was trim. Someone asked, hey, what do I do with trim? How can I get creative with it? And so he said that with trim, a lot of times you want to emulate the colors of woods, or it depends on what the look you're going for. If you're going for more of a traditional style, then you're definitely going to want to go with your white trims. Your standard white trims. But nowadays, another misconception that people have, and I actually learned this myself, was that you have to get a high gloss trim because of, if you're vacuuming and you nick it, you don't want it to chip or anything like that. But paint color today, guys, paints are, especially when you're going with your Sherwin-Williams, you're going with your higher end paints, are so good. They've come such a long way that you don't necessarily have to go with that high gloss anymore. You can actually go even with the flat and it's not going to chip anymore. Another thing that Nate discussed was the color of your interior doors. And he says, don't be afraid to mix it up. You don't have to always go with white interior doors. And so this is where trim really plays a part, because he says that you want to keep your trim cohesive, but not the same color as your interior doors. So obviously you're not going to paint your doors red or purple or anything like that. You always want to stay with your color palette and those good hues. But when it comes to doors, a lot of people have that misconception that, you have to always be choosing those white colors or anything like that. And it's really not. There aren't any really big time borderlines of where you shouldn't cross over into picking out a different color for your doors. So really try to play with that and kind of just get inspirations when you go on Pinterest or wherever it is that you seek inspiration for design. All right, so our next don't do is a big one for me, guys. I tell you guys from the bottom of my heart is don't follow trends. Trends are designed to make you buy things. And then they're designed to make you feel really bad when you don't. I always say, stick to things that make you happy in your home. It's your home. Add some character and really emphasize those things that create the space that you want to live in versus what you see on your screens or you see on Instagram or whatever it is. Always go for the timeless look or whatever it is that you're inspired by. Go with that. Go with your gut. Go with what makes you happy versus what else somebody else is telling you. This is actually something that Nate Berkus actually addressed on his Insta story too. So I was really happy to hear that. My last don't do is don't be afraid to think outside the box. Okay, so for example, a big thing that I love to do is add baskets under a console table. It's so unexpected, but you're adding functionality because you can organize your stuff in there. You can put some, blankets or pillows or whatever it is, but think outside the box, layer some rugs. A lot of people think, well, why would I layer rugs on top of each other? It's because it adds texture, Obviously, don't layer maybe something that has pattern and on top of something that has another pattern, but perhaps something that's more neutral and then put a patterned rug right on top of it. And it just adds that interest, that character that sometimes spaces really, really need. And another cool thing about this is that, a lot of people think rugs are really expensive. There are options out there that aren't, but if you're seeking to buy a rug that is a little pricier, obviously, if you go a little smaller with the rug, you're saving some bucks. So always get perhaps a smaller rug on top of a really large rug and just kind of have fun with it and layer those two. I always say that if you get a natural rug, so natural fiber, maybe a wool or anything like that, and then you put a different rug on top, something with a little more character, something with pattern, man, you are making a really cool statement. Guys, when it comes to designing and when it comes to homes, a lot of people get so intimidated. They kind of panic when it comes to, how am I going to pull the trigger on all this stuff? You're at the store. I've worked with so many people that are contemplating what they should buy. And it's really simple. I always say, start with one piece, one thing that really inspires you and work from that. So work your way out from that. And this leads me to how I pick design styles. A lot of people think that when you pick a design style, you have to just pick one. And that could be the case sometimes, but a lot of times you can combine styles as long as they're done tastefully. So, for example, I always say my biggest style that I love to do and that I have in my personal home is a rustic modern, right? So we live in a Spanish home and we kind of try to incorporate those organic modern touches to everything, but always staying in line with what are clean lines that really define that modern touch that I love. Where most people would think, well, it's Spanish, it's Mediterranean, you have to go with that wrought irons and everything really just that traditional Spanish look. But, in our case, we love modern and it's okay to flirt with different styles to kind of combine them and marry them and really have fun with them. So in terms of what my biggest advice is when it comes to trying to decide what style your home should go with is always look at the architecture of your home. The architecture of your home is really your answer. So for example, let's say you live in a historic Tudor home. You always want to be able to add elements in your home that are in line with the architecture of your home. Great architecture is always going to be the answer. Whether you're combining styles or not, just always incorporate that architecture and just kind of move from there. If you're going to go with modern Tudor or you're going to go with whatever it is you're going to go with, maybe hints of that Tudor style, and do your research, go ahead and jump on Google and Google some Tudor homes, historic ones, and really learn where architecture has gone throughout the years and then emphasize that in your home, guys. So let's talk a little bit about Instagram influence and how it's changing the way we design our homes. I was actually reading an article, and I believe this was on time.com, and it was about how millennials are changing the whole game, right? So we're changing the way that we shop. We're changing the way that we do so many things that, traditionally were done in such a different way. So it's making a lot of businesses reevaluate the way that they're selling, the way they're marketing, and the way they go about their business. And so with that, the reason for that actually is just Instagram. Instagram influence, you jump on your phone. It's the one place that everybody is on every single day. You wake up and get your fix on of Instagram. I hope you don't do it right away. Adam and I always say that you give up your sovereignty right away. If you jump on your phone and jump on Instagram, give yourself that moment in the morning to really get yourself together and love yourself and pay attention to yourself, drink some water and all that good stuff. But anyway, that's steering away from them. My point here is that I was talking about is that how much Instagram influences us as people, right? So I feel like with Instagram nowadays, you see so many beautiful homes, so many beautiful designs, and so many designers that really just push out there all those beautiful photos. And it's really making the masses of people, go out and shop for these things and want to create spaces in their home that are just like what they see on their screens. And so, this is obviously a double-edged sword. You can say it's great because nowadays, as opposed to before where you would watch it on TV or whatever it was mass marketing that way. Now it's more direct marketing. Now it's directed towards you. And I feel like now we all kind of have this opportunity to get experience and get inspiration from the top designers in the world. And it's all at your fingertips and you don't have to go pay for it or anything like that, so you can really gain some great experience. But at the same time, it also creates a lot of anxiety, a lot of ill feelings about, well, why don't I have this or why don't I have that or, can I go, or maybe more spending for a lot of people. So, it's just one of those things I wanted to touch on because I feel like as I'm watching this interior design community really grow on Instagram and really further their reach and touch so many people, I feel like, with that, I always want to stay humbled and always kind of remind you guys that, it isn't real life. Sometimes when it comes to designing, it's okay not to have those things. It's okay not to put that kind of pressure on your guys' selves, and including myself. I'm guilty of this 100%. So, really why I wanted to touch on this was really to remind you guys that your home is your home, and to just own your space. It's the best place on earth. It's yours. It's your family's. It's where you create these amazing memories. And just to remember that, when you buy things, I always say if you buy something and you're happy with it a month down the line or 2 weeks down the line, then you made a great purchase. If you buy something and you're regretting it that moment that you bought it, or even right when you came home and you want to return it and stuff, then maybe reevaluate the way that you shop, and just remember the motivation and the intention behind what you're buying, and just stay grounded when it comes to social media influence. All right, guys? So I'm going to wrap this up here, and I hope that, these tips of do's and don'ts and how to pick your own design for your home really helped you guys today, and I hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you next week, Good Vibers. Have a wonderful night.